I remember at Iowa, I was so fatigued, man. Like, you think about it, you're wide open around a oval, it's a ton of G, and like my steering wheel was a square steering wheel. I remember getting my palm under the wheel, and just wedged up like that. And I'm like, if I have a moment, I'm crashing, but I cannot hold on anymore. Like, and that's how I was driving the thing, man. I was like, this arm up here as much as I could, and just like, you're just turning in. Every time you turn, you're like, holding your buddy. You're just like, oh, please, someone crash so we can have a yellow.
Oh no! He's in the fence! They're both in the fence! They're all in the fence! Oh, unbelievable!
Sound check.
Sound check.
Got a massive show here today. Very excited about our guests. But of course, before we roll into that and introduce the great man, we got to give a shout out to our partners that keep us alive and keep us coming back every week for this podcast. So first of all, East Coast Car Rentals, if you're hitting the road for a holiday, AHU 15 for a 15% discount on already fantastic price. Hire cars, you roll into the next one, Barbs. Who else we got?
Trico wiper blades. So if you are in the market for a new set of wipers, make sure you hit Trico up. And
That's
if
it, mate.
you're in the market for a new or used car or even some 4x4 accessories, make sure you check out Lancaster Motor Group.
That's it. So thank you. If you can, subscribe, turn notifications on, all that jazz that keeps us on people's feed or keep feeding us to everyone. And let's get straight into it. Our guest, I'm super excited about this one today. We've talked about wanting to do more with some stuff in the US and talking about NASCAR, Indycar, all forms of the exciting motorsport around the world. So getting into it, our guest today is arguably probably one of Australia's best ever exports and Aussie drivers there's been. So two-time IndyCar champ, he's won the Indy 500, over 40 race wins as well, and he starts his 21st season in IndyCar. The stats don't lie. He is one of our best drivers and super excited to see how he goes this year. So welcome to the show, Will Power.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. That was a nice intro there, man.
It's been, mate, unreal to watch you over the years. And I remember even back in the Champ Car days, I mean, I personally was a huge fan of Champ Car. It looked like what it would be in the movies, you know, the promo girls, the atmosphere, everything. Champ Car looked like the race car driver's dream back then. So I've been a big fan of yours since those days, particularly on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, no, I tell you, man, the Champ Car was an absolute beast. I reckon it was the best power to weight to tire ratio for that IndyCar ever had. The DPO won that 07 car, which I actually recently drove, and it blows my mind. Those cars, a lot of horsepower, and it was actually very disappointing when. It was great that the series merged a year after they introduced that car, but it was disappointing we had to go to what the IRL car was, which wasn't quite as good.
Where did you recently drive that, Will?
I drove it down in Houston, just at a track called MSR Houston. It's sort of a country club track, but just an old guy that owns a couple of them and wanted me to drive it to see what it could do around there. And I was about 30 seconds quicker than the old bloke. The poor old fella. He was struggling to be flat on the straights, but it was awesome awesome to get back in one. They're a beast. I actually just thought about it'd be cool for one of you guys to jump in one and just feel it, because it sort of it blows your mind. Like if you haven't driven an open wheel car in a while, like you jump back in. Like an Indy car, but particularly as Champ Car, it just takes your head a while to get around just the speed of it, the horsepower, and how quickly everything comes up.
So were they quicker, Will, like say at, I know you probably didn't run the newer cars at Gold Coast, but like were they quicker over overall lap time, the old cars? Yeah,
I would say the Champ Car, now that we've added a windscreen, we've added 100 pounds with an electric engine, which the power from that definitely doesn't make up for the weight. For sure, like this thing was like 300 pounds lighter. I don't know whatever that is in kilos.
Basically, we'll just halve it, 150 or something. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm terrible at math.
Yeah, it was a lot of weight, big amount of weight. So this thing had, 300 pounds lighter plus more power, definitely more torque, more power as a V8 engine. So yeah, the cars we have now probably a little bit more downforce, but power and the weight of the other one, I'm pretty sure it'd be like 2, maybe 3 seconds quicker, depending on the track.
Out. What about physicality? Because the new car still doesn't have power steering and it looks hard. Like, I mean, I saw Scotty Mack getting out, and a supercar isn't that it's physical, but it's the heat that gets you. But it looks like the IndyCar for him was a big step up. Is the new car easier to drive than the Champ car? Or is the Champ car still trump that in every area?
I reckon probably similar, because you've got weight. As the downforce comes off, the new car with all that weight is probably heavier in sort of hairpins and so on, or slower corners. So yeah, it's about even. Honestly, man, one of the tracks we raced at in Alabama, I missed transferring to the next round of qualifying because my bloody steering wheel unwound itself, like on red tires, in a compression to finish the lap. I'm not like one of the smallest drivers. Like, I do a lot of weights and a lot of fitness, and that's the first time it's happened to me. Like, the actual steering wheel I had to lift because it just unwound itself. I couldn't get slip in the tire. It was crazy. It's like one of the fastest corners on the track, so you got a lot of downforce on in that place, plus a compression. So yeah, they're very, very physical. You cannot. I've spent the last 25 years having to do high, intense exercise with weights, and I think it's one thing I look forward to when I start racing is not having to do that every off season, every day, man. Like, it is, it's just, you can't not do it. You'll just struggle. So, very, very physical car. It's a car that rewards. I think it's the car, and I think it's a Firestone tire that rewards driving. Like, I would say for you guys, you would call it overdriving, because you've got to just wring every ounce out of the thing to get the lap time. Because if you go out and you do a very neat lap, you're like, man, that was a really good lap. You come in, they're like, oh yeah, no, you're P20, and he's like, well, I had no mistakes. But it sometimes blows my mind how hard you have to push the Indycar, but the Indycar and the Firestone tire. It's and the Champ car was, even more like that. I think, like, it rewarded really wringing the car's neck.
That I reckon is exactly what you want as a driver, though. Like, Shane at the end of year before last was complaining about our car at the moment. You got to almost drive below the limit and just make no mistakes, be super tidy. Particularly, like, if you have a slide in our car, the tire overheats really quickly, and it doesn't reward hustling. But as a driver, I reckon you just want to be able to wring the neck of the thing and see what it's got. Like, I looked, St. Petersburg's your first round this year, and watching onboard there of a qualifying lap is one of the coolest things to watch. It's where other motorsport, like particularly Formula One, doesn't deliver the same excitement through the TV, because you can see you guys hustling the wheel and working hard in that thing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's happened with tires lately, even in karts, because I still race karts, and they become very sensitive to surface temp. The Firestone, not quite as much. Like in qualifying, you can, depending on the track, obviously if it's a low grip track and you slip the surface too much. But I know in Europe that Pirelli, like, those guys, you can see they just cannot slip that tire, because you'll just pay. Like, if you have a little rear lock on entry, you will suffer for traction. And maybe that's what you guys have as well now, where they almost have to underdrive the car. You have to be very, very straight and careful with little locks and so on. We have that during the race, but I reckon in qualifying you don't. Qualifying on reds, you can absolutely hammer, and it does. It doesn't matter if it has a little slip or not. Which I just think that's the way the Firestones have been for a long time. Obviously, the chemicals and so on have changed with the makeup of the tire, but they've kind of kept a bit of that.
Do you think it'd be good if they brought in power steering for your cars, or you think it's good having to muscle the things and work like you do to stay fit?
I kind of push for power steering for a few like, I've broken my hand a few times in this thing. When you I guess when you hit a wall, but also when you bang wheels, sometimes it rips out and flick around and hit your hand, and I've had a few fractures. But I think you'd be able to hustle a little more in the really, really fast corners where you got all this downforce, and the wheel gets so heavy sometimes it gets a bit hard to feel. So I wouldn't complain if we got it. I know a lot of the drivers love the fact you got to manhandle the thing, you got to be have some muscle, and I think you would you get a little bit more out of them in fast corners, and obviously be a lot easier in races. Which the races are generally easier because the tire dags and it just gets lighter for that reason. You definitely couldn't pump out quality laps every time. Well, that amount of grip all race long would be very fatiguing. But yeah, I'm either or. I don't mind manhandling it either. But if you're thinking about bringing some, people who haven't got enough muscle in the sport, or maybe Euro drivers.
Nothing about Euros.
Yeah.
It is, even the ovals would maybe be a little bit better, I would imagine, if you did have the power steering. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe at Indy when the car's light and you're running low downforce, it might be good to have the heavy wheel. But would it be something that because when the steering is heavy and you have a little moment, it can be hard to get that off. Like at a road course, if you have oversteer or a snap in high speed, I imagine it's quite hard to recover it sometimes.
Yeah. Yes. Most of our ovals now are pretty light on downforce. So it used to be, man, like in 2008 when we were running, that was the first year where the two series merged, and it was the IRL specs, a lot of downforce. I mean, I remember at Iowa, which had recently I think they'd built it a couple of years before, so it had a ton of grip. I was so fatigued, man. Like, you think about it, you're wide open around a oval. I think it was less than a mile. So it's just a ton of G. And like my steering wheel was a square steering wheel. I remember getting my, I got so fatigued. I put my palm under the wheel and just wedged up like that. And I'm like, if I have a moment, I'm crashing, but I cannot hold on anymore. I'm like, and that's how I was driving the thing, man. I was like, this arm up here as much as I could, and just like, you're just turning in. Every time you turn, you're like, holding your buddy. You're just like, oh, please, someone crash so we can have a yellow. I remember Darren Manning actually pulled in. He was driving for AJ Foyt, and he was a skinny dude, and he was like, he couldn't continue. He had to pit. He's like, I can't physically do it anymore. It was like painful. Yeah, that's where I would like power steering, but downforce, a lot less downforce now. Usually on an oval, you're downshifting in the corner. And ovals are so much about feel. Like, you just feel almost every footprint of the tire, like, what's it doing? Is the front biting? Is it not? You're very, very finicky sort of discipline, I'd say. It's very, very much about the car, the setup, and how you're feeling and confidence. So I think at Indianapolis, not having power steering gives you a lot more feel of what it's doing.
It's awesome to get that insight, because I never realised they were that physical to drive. Like, obviously they're physical, they're a race car, but that's pretty amazing to.
Yeah, I knew that they were harder than Formula One. Like, I've heard F1 drivers say that the only real physical challenge is your neck because of the downforce. But the steering, I think, even power steering, I've heard increases in a high speed, high downforce corner, so the steering weight doesn't change, which I don't think I would particularly like. Like, I just raced the new Porsche last year, and that's got some electric power steering, and I had no feel. Like, that was the strangest thing to drive. I raced at the Melbourne Grand Prix, and the steering's light, and there's no physicality to it, and there's just you don't feel the tyre load. You clip a curb, the feedback's different, it's not the same. But there's got to be maybe an in-between where you need some of it, but maybe not F1 level.
Yeah, well, this season for IndyCar, wheels looking pretty good. They've changed over to Fox, and they've sort of been pumping it up in the. I'm looking forward to. I haven't seen your ad yet, but I can imagine going off the two that I have seen, it's going to be pretty funny. So, do
you know if they're going to do one? Are you doing one, or are they? Because I can't imagine they're doing them for every driver, because they're pretty ridiculous ads.
Yeah, no, I know when they were filming out in LA, I was scheduled to go there, so they were going to have me do something, but then the time they had a lot of for Newgarden and Palou was too much. So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't even thought about it. People have asked me that you're going to do a commercial, but not even on my mind, to be honest. But it would be cool. I mean, the Fox deal is very good for IndyCar. Like, every race on network, obviously doing a lot of promotion, and it's good to have a partner that really cares. Like, they really want to grow the sport. That's sort of what IndyCar has needed. So jumped around, different TV packages over the years, but Yeah, I can say over, my 21 years in IndyCar, it's been such a significant change and I'd say growth of the series that has just continued constantly to the level we have now where, there's not a bad team in the series. There's not a bad driver in the series. It's very, very enjoyable racing. It's a great package. And I think we have a very good, a very entertaining series that just has struggled to get the word out almost. It deserves a bit more recognition, and we're getting that with Fox. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully on an international scale, and that's why we wanted to start chatting to you guys as well, because I've always kept an eye on it, but it hasn't been easy to keep an eye on it. Like, it's one of those things that Formula One is a lot easier, and that's sort of the issue at the moment. It's on Stan here in Australia, which a lot of people are subscribed probably to KO because of Fox, and then maybe make the choice between the two because financially, I imagine having every paid subscription is not easy for everyone. But I hope that maybe there's some flow-on effect out here once the popularity rises, because I imagine it will once they... I guess the reason the ads are exciting, and as a driver, you don't think about it, but externally, I think it's important because it'll show the personalities in the sport like that, and that I think is what will hopefully grow outside of the IndyCar bubble, grow the popularity, because it looks like what Formula One's done really well, and their product on track isn't what IndyCar's product is, I don't believe, and I'm a Formula One fan. But it's just not like, unless you're a diehard Formula One fan, the races, you're going to tune in for Drive to Survive if you're not a diehard, because the races will probably let you down. But IndyCar races, I think, are exciting. So hopefully we're just excited. And with round one at St. Pete, I reckon that's a great start. That's one of the tracks that's always exciting. So looking forward to seeing you get out there.
No, a Drive to Survive really they were in a way lucky that, that they'd started that TV show and then COVID happened. Everyone's sitting at home watching Netflix, and I've never seen something blow up so much, which has actually been fantastic for motorsport. It gets a lot of people into motorsport, understanding it, because, the average Joe probably doesn't understand motorsport that well, and sort of the format of it, the qualifying, the practice, how it all plays out. I think that's helped us, IndyCar, because it's an open wheel series. But other series have tried to replicate that. We had a reality TV show, and it definitely didn't hit as well as Drive. So if you got a quarter of what Formula One got out of that thing, you'd be looking so good. I know NASCAR did it, and I'm not sure they definitely didn't get the hit either. So. Because Formula One, I remember back in 2016, before Liberty, I can't remember if it was before Liberty. When did Liberty take it over? But
it would have been around
it was actually earlier than that, because I remember speaking to someone who knew the guys at Liberty very well, with a big business guy, and he said, they're struggling. They've lost 25% of their TV audience. So they were looking like they were in a bad spot for a while, but man, did they ever just hit it with Netflix. It's just what a great job they did. They've become the biggest sport in the world. It's amazing.
Hunters, we've recently partnered with Stratton Finance. So if you're looking to get behind the wheel of a dream car, upgrade the caravan, or hit the water in a new boat, even expand your business with a commercial loan, follow the link in the description below. At Stratton Finance, their team of Australian-based brokers are here to help. With over 25 years' experience and a trusted panel of more than 40 lenders, Stratton Finance experts make it easy to find finance options that suit you. For full terms and disclaimers, visit lp.strattonfinance.com.au/AHU or follow the link in the description. Back to the pod. We're going to ideally put this out right before your round one. So what does a preseason look like right now? I'm sure after 21 seasons you get a little bit tired of all the PR, photo shoots, everything that we see on socials right now, and you must be looking forward to the first race. But you talk about how hard the cars are to race. What's your preseason like now? And also, how much testing do you guys actually get to do outside the 17 events?
We get, seriously, man, one test day at coming up in a couple of weeks. That's it. So I would say last year, when I was doing most of the testing for the hybrid, I did probably more than a season worth of testing before the season. So I was in the car all the time, be like, yeah, you're doing 16 sets of tires over the next 2 days, and it's just literally full tank, new tires, run it out, full tank, new tires, run it out, like all day. And then I've got this off season where it's like, yeah, you've got one test day, that's it. A lot of sim time lately. Chevy's got a tech center with a very big simulator, and it's pretty good. Definitely not good enough for getting down to the fine details, but at least you're getting some sort of mileage in. I also I love the KZ around the karts, which is good fun, bit of car fitness.
What's the most physical, I guess, like starting a season with like the Adelaide 500 historically for supercars has been a big shock to the body, because I guess testing's probably similar for the Supercar Championship. It's a 1 day preseason test, and then you haven't driven since first week of December, and then March you roll into Adelaide and it's super hot. The track's pretty tough, and usually it separates the ones that put in the effort in the off season or not. Is that similar to your start of the season? And then what tracks would you say are the most physical across the year?
Yeah, St. Pete. It's because it's down in Florida, and extremely humid, and you're always in a corner, so you don't have much time to rest. So you usually do your first practice session and first run, like 6-7 lap run, and come in, and the engineer will be asking you how's the car, and you won't be able to talk. You're like, here, let me catch my breath. Like it is exactly that. Like it's hard to talk when you come in because it's quite a lot of cardio in those cars. That's the thing. When I did the Gold Coast race in the supercar, the heat kills you. Like it's not the cardio, the weight, or any G-force quite nice when the cold water's running around the cool suit, but when that failed, man, oh my God, the heat.
Did you experience the failure?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
Cool suit failure.
It was brutal, man. Brutal. And I thought, well, this is just normal, but Will Davis said, no, that was one of the tougher ones. Like the Gold Coast was pretty tough. So, but since we had the windscreen, you got both of that. You got the heat. So we wear a cool suit now, and you've got the real physicality of it. So it'd be like getting a rowing machine and putting it in a heated room and pounding away. So that's sort of the feeling. So yeah, we got as much air to the you can get to your head, and they've opened vents because drivers. It was very tough at first when they put that windscreen on. Very hard. Some drivers really struggled, but it has got better. The cool suit was the biggest one. Cool suit. It's not like what you guys have where it's really cold, but it's cooler than body temp. Like it's just running through. It's not. There's nothing cooling it but the at times warm air, but it is still very beneficial.
I do honestly love hearing it, and it's not great for you guys, but hearing how hard these cars are to drive, I think is really cool, because I just hate hearing punters say that driving a car is not difficult. I mean, even the calorie burn, I've shown my trainer at our gym, he actually last year, or year before last, he used to annoy me. I'd come back from a race weekend and he'd go, you look like you've lost weight. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've lost a couple of kilos actually. And he goes, well, did you train across the weekend? Or like you haven't been in for 5 days. Did you train while you're away? And I'm like, man, the car is hard work. Like I still, you're sweating your balls off and it's hard work, but they don't understand. Like unless a lot of people think if it's not like typical exercise, it's not physical. And I think that if people understood just how hard an IndyCar driver is working, especially like I think Scotty Mack got out one race and he jumped off the car and did his roll and said that like he was just toast. Like he jumped and landed and was gassed. But I reckon it's cool if the fans could appreciate how hard it is, because it is difficult to imagine even like neck failure. I remember the first day I did in F3 was at Rockingham in the UK, which he probably drove at, and it's anti-clockwise. Yeah. And the British Formula 3 car doing race runs, it's only a junior formula, but my neck completely failed. It was horrible. And I'm going through all the lefts and my head's leaning on the rest. It's hard to describe the impact that has then on your shoulders and being able to keep turning the car. It does get tough. It's fucking hard work.
You struggle if you're not fit, I tell you. But I tell you, car fitness, it's crazy how much easier it gets towards the end of the season, how car fit you become. Like you can do as much as you want outside the car, but you still get in and you're just using different muscles and you still struggle those first few races. You still, until you get, literally, I remember speaking to McLaughlin, I'm like, how easy is a race now when we got to the end of the season compared to the beginning of the season? So it's just, you can't, it's so hard to replicate that. You just can't unless you're doing miles. So, you're always going to suffer that, that first practice, first qualifying session, first race. Yeah. I actually remember my first champ car race. It was in '06. Well, wouldn't have been my first. I did that Australia race. It was at Long Beach. So I'm like 15 laps in. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to complete this race. It was brutal, man. Just brutal. And then your body must go through, I don't know, if you've done a marathon or something like that, it just goes, at some point you get your second wind and you just keep, and by the end you're pushing really hard. But you get that real burn on the first stint always. As you get older, your mind must know that, because I have to say my races I haven't struggled in a race for a long time.
Yep.
A long time. I don't know whether I'm just more relaxed in the car, but it has got easier as I've got older.
That's got to help even confidence. Like, I think that when you go into a race knowing, okay, this is like the heat, you go to events like Newcastle was hard in the supercar, and there was places that you couldn't really prepare for, and some of your nerves or the anxiety came from knowing that this is going to really, really hurt. And if you're going through the race and you're feeling pretty good, it's actually a confidence boost, because you're thinking, fuck, the guy in front of me is for sure hurting worse than I am. And in Indycar, in a high-speed corner, when you're late in the race, knowing, okay, I feel pretty good here, the others are hurting, it does help your confidence, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah. That is a thing. Like, when you're burning like bad, if you know your own fitness level and you think you're very fit, I used to think that in the car. I was like, well, if I'm hurting, he's hurting more. And like, you just even push harder. Like, let's make him burn, like keep pressure on until he makes a mistake. Because that is a thing. I mean, man, when you're just dying in the car, you're losing a couple tenths. You just are.
Yeah.
You're just not able to put it all together quite as well. That actually, one thing blew me away about McLaughlin. Man, he ran a really fast rack, so it was heavier than what we were running, because he wanted to kind of make it more like the supercar where you don't turn much.
Right.
But it just blew my mind that he dealt with that. He must be a strong guy, because.
And did he stick with that? Do you know?
He stuck. Yeah, he started coming back a little bit last year, but often he'll run a step faster steering rack.
Yeah, right.
Which is I did that in the earlier days, but I found a bit more feel with a slower rack. Not as slow, like you could go slower, but what he ran and be able to run it in the fast corners and have no problem, really. He was, unless he just, I don't know. He's able to do it. It's like, I don't know how many people in the field are doing that, but I don't think many.
There you go. He'll be feeling like,
Oh, yeah.
after
now
that,
that he sees a strong guy, he'll be walking around pumping up Des and Troy.
Yeah.
Last year, you 3 wins, mate. You came really close to the title there. You're with Penske, one of the top teams. You got some great talents. But who do you think is the hardest competitor that you've got to race out there? And who do you think is going to be the hardest person to try and beat this year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, without question, Palou is the most complete driver I've seen in a long time. He's not necessarily the fastest guy. Like, he won't, get 7 poles or something in a season. But as far as just walking that tightrope of, aggression versus, reward, he's very good at that. He puts the whole season together really well. He's really good like that. Then you get guys like Colton Herter, who are incredibly fast, but definitely make more mistakes. The field's pretty deep. Like, 3 Penske drivers, two or three of the Andretti guys. Ericsson's sort of always there, but not quite. And the two Ganassi guys. You got Lundgaard at McLaren. Like, there's a lot of depth, a lot of guys that a tough fight for a top 5 in the championship. Definitely a very, very hard fight to be in the top 5. But then, to go further and win the championship, you got 2 bad races and it starts to look pretty bad for you. A win pays big time, but having a DNF. So you got to be very smart with how you play all that. Know your weekend. You know what your car's capable of, and sort of drive to that. Don't get sucked into the moment.
Is that where
with emotion? So
is that where you've been so strong, Will? Because as you said, this is your 21st season this year. You think that's something that you've learned over the time? Like, if the car's good for 5th, you'll just run a 5th rather than trying to dive bomb up for 4th and wreck your day or something. Is that come with age? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I've matured a lot as a driver. I mean, you think about it. You guys know that. Like, just maturity with age in anything, in business, whatever you're doing. You're just so much smarter in that respect. But you got to be careful not to fall into the emotional thing. I'm like, I did that a couple times last year. And we ended up, it was actually with Scott, unfortunately. One was at Toronto. It was a move that I'd done multiple times in the past and in that race. And usually the guy kind of gives up, like, but yeah, that would have been a time to really just sit back and take the points. As it was, foolish move. But you got to know that was, you got to walk that tightrope, right? Like, if I got him, then I had a shot at Dixon, and then suddenly you're on the podium and you've got some good points. So, it was late in the race. But I have to say, if I had my mental smarts and just maturity of now, back in the early days, I'm sure I would have won more championships. I'm sure I certainly had a lot of pace, but definitely made some bad mistakes.
It's one of those things, though, without the mistakes, you don't end up where you are now and still in contention at 21 seasons. It would be great if none of us needed to learn from mistakes and we just never make them. But it is, it's tough. I guess the one thing to keep developing is always making sure you analyse when something happens. Like, for young drivers listening, that's something I reckon is a really good lesson, is like, I still think there's often, or almost every time, something you can learn from an accident yourself, even if it's not your fault. Like, there's usually something. When you talk about a championship,
big time.
You talk about a championship. Mike Borland was who you drove for as well. He was one that always hammered into me about, like, the day the car, if you don't think you can get on the podium that day and you're running 4th or 5th, you collect those points that day and fight the next one, because that's what will win you a championship. And then on the day when you can win race, you go for it, and you take those risks to win. But the championship, I see here, like, you got 3 wins, but everyone in the top 6, the least amount of wins was 2, and the most is 3. It is like, that's why we ask who you think is the standout, because sitting on the side, it's nearly impossible to pick someone in IndyCar as a standout. Like, Formula One is always one team, or maybe 2 teams, like McLaren kind of found their way at the end. But my question is, like, what happens in an off season as well, or do we or would we expect that there's going to be this many drivers in contention? Is there development that happens, and do you think as a team, because everything's a lot more controlled in Formula One, but do you think you guys can make a step forward with your package to the point where you are a step above everyone else, or do you expect something similar to last year?
Oh, it's very minimal, man. It's very controlled. The only thing you can touch is the dampers, build your own dampers. And I think everyone's, we spent a lot of time with that same, it's the only sort of only series in the world that allows mass dampening, the inerters in the damper. So, and I think everyone's developed that a lot and probably ended up at a similar conclusion. So it's very fine details, a lot of driver analysis, a lot of video and driver analysis. We have a thing called Dartfish, which I'm not sure if you guys use that, where they film. They actually got a system now to film a whole lap. So basically now when you come in the pits, they'll be able to put an iPad in front of you, and you will have the whole lap of the quickest sectors of each car, filmed from the outside. So you can see where someone's flowed more speed or slowed the corner up, bigger exit, or used this curb, or so we get so much information between every session. And then in the off season, you do a lot of analysis on driving details, and you work on that in the sim, and it's a lot of that in IndyCar now. So, and also because of legal reasons, every team can see each other's telemetry. So you get you get speed, throttle, steer, brake, from every car on the grid. Everyone sees each other's data. So it's hard to, so no one can really hide things. And so a lot of it's, based around driving. Obviously, setup philosophies. We all know, it's bars, roll centers. It's all the same adjustments everyone can do, springs. So you can turn up the track and have a very good handling car, but be in the wrong philosophy, say, we turned up, we have high aero, but a safe mechanical balance, like high front aero, COP. But the quickest car will have a high roll center and low front aero, and like you're just simply in the wrong box. And you'll be, 3/10 is like bloody outside top 10. So, then you got to quickly switch, which we've got good at, switching philosophies quickly if we feel like we're off the pace. So very, very detail orientated now with driving detail, setup detail. Everyone's doing spy photos, so every team's taking photos. So as soon as you do a session, like all the engineers are analyzing, the best cars, what wing angle, front wing angle, what springs they got, what have they got the bars connected, what roll center is it, so it's a lot of that stuff now.
And what about from inside the cockpit? What can you do? Because one thing, our Gen 3, for listeners, when we switched to that, we've kind of gone with a very controlled package, but then we've removed driving tools from inside the car, which I think for us was a big negative because that was something in the race. Like at the moment you roll out, and we've joked about it being an engineer's car. One of the downsides is you kind of got what you got when you leave pit lane. The old car, you had the anti-roll bars, which at least you could with fuel load changing and the track evolving, you could change things. So like, what do you have in the car that you can use?
We have, front and rear roll bar adjusters. Obviously now a lot of stuff with traction, and you definitely play with the hybrid stuff on steering wheel now, switches, so you can somewhat balance the car like that, with the way it has reverse torque and so on as it regens. But on the ovals, you got to be very on top of those adjustments. Like if you feel an imbalance, you got to be quick to adjust so you don't dag the tire or dag one end. Be on top of that stuff, which is bars, front and rear bar adjustments, weight jacker. So you do quite a lot with weight jacking. I mean, you can move 100 pounds plus of cross weight each, to your front, each front wheel. So you could, if you're loose, you'll put a lot of weight on that right front, which, gives you a lot of support, gives you understeer, gives you stability. If you want the car to really turn, you put a lot of cross weight on the left front, which those swings can be massive in the way the car behaves. Massive, as you would know, like if you had a car with cross weight that was not right, like you can feel it significantly. It turns really well one way and badly the other. So, and wing adjustments, obviously, in the pit stops is also very big, and that's on road courses and ovals.
And how long is a pit stop to be able to do a wing adjustment? Can they get that done pretty easily without losing on-track time?
I think you would, if it's on fuel, so like we can do tyres in, let's say basically 5 seconds. But if it's a full fill, it's like 8 seconds. So in 8 seconds, you do a wing change.
Sorry, well, you can get it done in 8 seconds, can you, the wing change?
You can, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little harder on the super speedway because they've got to reach all the way around, jump in front of the car. It's on the front nose cone, because you don't have end plates on the super speedway or big end plates. And on the road courses, the front tire change is right there. The end plate of the front wing is right there with an adjuster. And they can almost be finishing the tire and then reaching and go for a couple turns, which, 2.5 turns, 3 turns is like 1% of front aero. So it's quite an adjustment.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. I didn't realise about the crossweight stuff, the jacking. That's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know, and also, how quickly you need to be on top of that to look after the tyres. But one thing we've had that's been a talking point recently is that Cadillac going into Formula One in 2026, and Elliot was curious, popped this one in the questions for us about who I think Colton Herta has been talked about as a potential there, but who do you see? Yeah. You mentioned Alex Palou. Is he someone you think you'd love to see in Formula One, or who of the guys in IndyCar do you reckon could make that transition over?
Yeah, I know Pato O'Ward does. He probably tested in the off season. Palou is tested. I would say Colton Herta is probably the most likely guy to end up in that GM seat, the Cadillac seat, because that was sort of in his. I believe it was in his contract. That was just the talk I've heard. I don't know for sure, but. He became the highest paid IndyCar driver, but I think that included some F1 stuff in there. So, I would be, I'd be surprised. I think they want an American. I think the, Liberty Media, the series wants an American because it has, Formula One's become so big over here now. They got 3 races over here. So, I would be shocked if an American isn't in that seat, isn't in one of those seats, and I'd be shocked if it's not Colton Herta. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting now with, F1 drivers have always talked about IndyCar. Like, I know there's a quote from Schumacher saying about why would he do it, because it's beneath F1. But I love that, Romain Grosjean, because Formula One's ultimately it's going to be about the car as well.
Yeah.
And I think they underestimate how important that is. But when you see like Romain come over, and it wasn't easy, and he's one of the fastest guys, I think, in a good car on his day in F1. But it would be good to see some crossover, because I think it's got to the point where Formula One's unattainable for most drivers. I think that now you're seeing actually some of the best drivers land in IndyCar, and the competition every year. And that is, as a fan, is one of the most impressive things over 21 seasons, to go from what you did in Champ Car against Bourdais and all those days, and then to be now at Penske for so long. 2 years ago, you won the championship, still winning races more than the guy who won the championship. So, I reckon it'd be cool to see some crossover of guys going into F1 and really show that IndyCar is actually, it's got some of the best drivers in the world. I mean, Scotty Mack, I rate as now one of the fastest guys that I've competed against, and and I've raced against a lot of the guys in Europe as well, as have you, I'm sure, in your junior careers.
Yeah, IndyCar has a huge presence of guys that went through the full ladder system over there, F4, F3, F2. And like you say, it's almost impossible to get in Formula One now. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. And so a lot of them are landing over here in IndyCar. And the field has become incredibly young. Or maybe I've got old. I'm not sure which one it is. But, I'm racing against guys. I'm 20 years older than them. It's crazy. But it is a great spot for someone in Europe to land. Like, it's, I went through F3 and World Series by Renault over there, Renault 3.5. And next step for me was either pay another $1 million to do GP2, or you've got this offer to run Champ Car and get paid. So do I stay in Europe and rack up a bill with maybe getting Formula One if you're lucky, or start getting paid? Like, you had to make that decision. And at some point you got to make the jump. But I think IndyCar is a very good spot for that. It's a great series. The driver pays are very good now. The highest I've seen all my time over here. And a lot of teams with big money as well, like a lot of very good teams, a lot of good spots, and you have a great career. So I think Europe's lucky to have IndyCar. Like, how many F2, F3, F2 drivers, and they're all bloody good. Like, top 10 of F2 is seriously good drivers that end up with, end up with nothing. I think they're lucky to have a place like that to go. I felt like I was lucky to end up in Champ Car.
Yeah.
Like, what was I going to do? Spend all this time in open wheel as you don't get into Formula One. It's either sports car or go home and run supercars. But you've built this skill of driving open wheels. It was just such a pity.
Yeah.
So I feel like these F2 guys are lucky to have a place like that to go. And and you talk to them, they love it. They love the racing. It's a very enjoyable series too. I say, like, of all the series in the world, the satisfaction you get out of racing IndyCar, you rarely finish a race saying that was sort of dull or boring. It's always so much action and weird stuff happening in that series, and then you're racing short ovals, one or two super speedways. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of some of the super speedways we used to do. I mean, it's bloody nuts.
Yeah.
But Indy's obviously its own event. But the oval mix is really cool as well. Like, you're getting a very nice mix of ovals, some flat 1 mile ovals and high banked short ovals, and the variety you get over a season in IndyCar is incredible.
Yeah.
The variety of sort of racing you do, there's nothing else in the world like it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's good to watch. I think I've enjoyed as well seeing the guys that we respect so much go over and have a tough time though on the ovals, because that's giving credit to turning left, and that's why it's interesting to hear about the jacker and what you're doing in the car and stay on top of those things and about the feel, because that's another one we hate hearing is how it's just turning left. It must be easy. So. Yeah, I think that would have been, I imagine, a big transition as well for you. Was it when Champ Car rejoined back with IRL, and you had to go do ovals? Was that a steep learning curve back then?
It was a very uncomfortable, steep learning curve, but somewhat easy, which made it really dangerous. Because the formula that we go to these super speedways, and you drive out of the pits wide open and on the white line, short line, and that was it. That's the weekend, man. And I just thought, this is stupid. It was, you could have your grandma running on your right rear, man, like just running with you. It was that easy.
Right.
So I really disliked the formula, and that slowly changed after a couple of terrible accidents to a place where it was once again difficult, and you had to have the car really right, and it wasn't just wide open, and it just pack racing for Indy cars it just wasn't. It's sort of a product of the series splitting in the mid '90s, and when they formed the IRL, you had a lot of guys that probably shouldn't have been there. Some guys, and I think they just made it easy not to crash cars and cost teams a lot of money, because all the teams were new. As they're trying to get car count up, and in some ways it was spectacular to watch. That this is crazy, and some of the action was good. But when you're in the middle of that, and you see some of the nasty accidents, you're like, oh, what are we doing?
Just strapped to a rocket ship that's glued to the road until it's not glued anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That is ovals. I would say, like, if you turned up to Indianapolis and you've got a good car and you don't have much experience, you'll be quick, you'll be good. The thing is that running in dirty air and where to place the car, or when you do just get a gust of wind or the wrong buffet of air, it just snaps on you like that. Like, you're just in the water. It's almost not correctable. Like when I crashed in the race last year, it cooled off and the car got loose, and I just turned into one. And you watch mine, but I don't even correct. I'm just like, it's over.
Gone.
You're not catching this thing.
Yep.
It's done. Unless you paddle a water. That is the most incredible. That guy, I've never seen that in an Indy car. He actually,
I saw that as well.
Two big moments, and then actually spun up on throttle. But for the most part, you're crashing, man. It's like that's that sort of, I would say the weird thing about ovals is you can't drive around a bad car. You just can't. So the skill in it is really knowing what the car needs and relaying that to the engineer and being able to make those adjustments in the car. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned, when I became good at ovals, was always trust your ass. Like, if you feel like because you feel like, sometimes you feel like, oh man, I'm such a wanker. I'm just scared of the car. Like I'm scared to go fast.
Yeah.
But it's, the car's not lying to you. It is saying like, yeah, the thing is moving, and you don't feel comfortable for a reason. You can't get locked into it, and because in the early days, I just feel, I'm just not brave enough. I'm not, I'm just, I'm scared of the car. But if you're scared of the car is not good.
Yeah.
Because when the car's good on an oval, you feel amazing. It's just, it's a real thrill, but it's the worst day of your life when that thing goes loose and you can't get locked in the thing. Oh man, it's terrible. Like and you kind of don't know how much to lift either. It's really hard to find that limit. It's not an obvious limit. It's not a progressive, it's not a progressive slide like the car's telling you what it's doing. It's just like, I can tell that if I put any more lock, it's probably going to snap, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's quite an awkward feeling. Yeah. The IndyCar in particular, because I reckon a NASCAR probably tells you a lot of what it's doing. Like it has probably a lot of movement before it goes and a bit more slip angle. Indy with all that, a very hard sidewall tire because it's got to be able to deal with the load, and all this aero is lost as you start putting yaw in the car. You've got the floor, you got the wings, everything's meant to be going somewhat straight. So yeah, she goes bad pretty quick.
They are scary. They're scary to watch. I mean, that was why I was surprised. I think that McLaughlin made the jump across to IndyCar, because I had heard his dad, because he'd done no open wheeler racing in his career, and I had heard his dad didn't want him to do Formula Ford for safety reasons, and then to go over and do some of those ovals, that's got to be the scariest thing, to strap yourself in and do that for the first time. Unbelievable.
I was going to say, I remember he that year, what was it? I think it was his first Indy, and I'm like looking at his setup, and I was like, oh man, you're driving it loose. I could see his steering, you're driving it loose. I said, no, I'm comfortable, man. And I think I said it to my wife. I'm like, it's going to get caught, man. That's the thing with those. Until you've had a shunt, that's your limit. It doesn't tell you. And like, I think he'd been in traffic for a bit. And then when I saw that shunt, I was like, yeah, that's, you can drive here or you can drive there. It's like that little amount, like how loose do you want to go? You can always tell the guys who've been around, they never let it get to that point. But it was good though. It was impressive. He was doing it all month. He hung on to it even in the race. I was like, yeah, he was. And then it eventually bites you. But yeah, it's a fine line, man. A very fine line.
Yeah, that's crazy. What I really wanted to do was our Patreon members have sent in a few questions as well. So we will carry on with a few more questions from us, but I wanted to chuck in here. And if you do want to support us on Patreon, that would be amazing. And you get the opportunity here to throw in a few questions as well. But Rob Kingston has actually asked, is curious about Gold Coast and whether it's more fun in an IndyCar or the supercar. What was your memories of that, mate?
It was very fun, the IndyCar. The Champ car actually was the most fun. That sort of 07 when we ran there, and it was the big track too. The supercar was fun though. Like, man, I had a blast and it was a very similar style to driving the IndyCar actually at that time. The way you drove, it wasn't really a coast phase because you have the spool and the thing. You got to crack the throttle to make it turn and carry the brake all the way in, and then it wasn't far removed of the way I drove the IndyCar at that point.
Yeah, wow.
It was, I enjoyed the supercar. It was obviously a very different discipline, but the space you were driving was very similar.
Yeah.
The way you just, the nice bleed off the brake and then crack the throttle to start the rotation. It was fun. But the Champ car around that joint, oh my God, man. You can imagine, a car that much power, weighs like that, all that downforce. Yeah, very, very enjoyable.
Unreal to watch that was too. That's some of the coolest, I think, racing vision is that still. Because you still took a lot of curb as well. The beach chicane was a lot flatter, but I was surprised how you'd hammer through the beach chicane in the Champ car.
Yeah, we kind of built the dampers a little bit around that to have blow-offs over those curbs. And it was a great event. It was a real pity that IndyCar let that go. It really was. And it was just, I think it was the teams that had American sponsors didn't really want to go down there. And I just thought, you'll never get back. You never get back there. You let that go. And it was, I've never, like when you see events, you see, I've been to the Indy 500, some of our big events. I mean, the Gold Coast, they just put it on such a great event. Whoever promoted that at the time had a big budget, and 340,000 people over a weekend is very, very well done.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good segue to our next question, which is from Flynn Johnson. Should IndyCar return to Australia, and if so, which track would you want to see IndyCar at if it came back to Oz?
I keep hearing, these guys talking about the Adelaide track. What do you guys call that event now?
Adelaide 500.
Not the Clips.
It's now the Velo
Adelaide 500. Yeah, that track, I think that would be actually a very cool track for open wheel, because obviously originally was the Formula One track. So, but I have keep hearing that, like, IndyCar has been speaking with those guys. So I don't know whether that would ever happen, but to be sort of a weekend with supercars, and I think it'd be a big event. It'd be bloody cool. That's really the only place I could see it happening. Maybe you could do the short track at the Gold Coast, but I think the Adelaide track would probably be the best place for us.
Yeah, I agree.
And then Leon has thrown in a couple of questions here, but I really like this question because I've seen that you're helping out a young lad, Lockie Hughes, in from a young Aussie. But Leon's asked if you keep an eye on the open wheel drivers or development here in Australia, and if so, it appears to be going backwards with S5000 folding. NZ seem to be more successful. Is this the case, and what could or should be done to open up pathways for open wheel drivers here in Australia again?
What I've thought, because of the popularity of Formula One, I guess around the world, but I have a feeling it's very big in Australia if you watch the Grand Prix and how many people are there, is that Australia needs an open wheel category. My thought was something like Super Formula from Japan, which is a pretty relevant car for anyone that was to go over to Europe, and it'd have to be a series that's run in the off season of Formula One and sort of Europe F2 and all those series, because you get guys coming over to run those cars in Australia in that off season. You probably get guys from Japan as well to run those cars, and have an open wheel series that's relevant in Australia again. I don't know how possible that is, and if it's even, if there's even money around. You have to get a guy that was fully behind it. Someone like Tony Quinn, I see likes to back the right series in Australia. So, that was my thought. I think that's what they need, but I do keep an eye on the young guys that come over to the States to race, even in Europe. Lockie Hughes, I think, is really fast and has got a great opportunity to get to IndyCar if he puts this next season together very well.
Yeah, that'll be good to see. And Leon also threw in one more, which was a really relevant question for us because it's always Bathurst or the championship. You've won both, 2 championships, one Indy 500. You only get to choose one. Which would it be? Now you've done the double.
To win another 500,
It would be a 500, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It would be. I know it's tough to give up a championship, but if you see how much it means in this country to win Indy 500, that's why you would pick that. It's crazy when you win it, how much attention it gets and how long it lasts, like a gift that keeps on giving. It's crazy. It's like winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, very prestigious race to win. But I love the championship. It sucks you pick between those two, but the Indy 500 is a very big deal over here.
And G-Train wants to know, can we get the full story behind the double bird and where it started? So when you gave, I think it was the tower, was it, when you give him the double bird and it sort of went viral?
Yeah.
What's the backstory to that? Who were you flipping off? What was the deal?
So we were under yellow and it started to sprinkle and they said we're going green, on an oval, like anti-dampness on the track. And I think all the drivers are screaming on the radio, they can't go green, don't go green. They go green, sure enough. And so who I was flipping off was the race. It was actually Brian Barnhart at the time, and I'm there. Tim Cindric's with me, and I'm walking, and he's sort of riding along to calm me down. Like, where are those? Where are whatever? Anyway, whatever I called them. He said, "Oh yeah, they're up in the tower." And I looked up, and I like, double bird. And Tim's like, "Don't do that." I said, "No, we're behind the fence. No one will see us." Sure enough, get back to the motorhome, and there it is on the screen. And it was like, yeah. But that was so natural for me to do. I've flipped off so many people in my time, and I don't find it as offensive as some people. Like, I don't know, in Australia, I don't know if you guys were the same, but growing up in Toowoomba, you'd flip people off all the time. It was just a normal thing.
It's like giving a thumbs up. Yeah, it's almost like a thumbs up.
It's a term of endearment. It is.
Yeah, no, actually, absolutely. Yeah, you walk into work in the morning and the boys are there, you flip them off, they're like, yeah, Pal's here, good stuff. Yeah.
I love it. I wanted to know, has that ever, your passion, we had a great chat the other night with Daniel Sanders, who just won Dakar on the bike, and we chatted to him about he is very passionate, and he had some big fights going on behind the scenes with KTM over the last few years about trying to get the bike to where he needed it to be, and that can often, cause friction in a team. And one thing here in Australia, I think in supercars in particular, I think you got to be careful sometimes how you fight in the pursuit of performance, because you can easily upset people. But has your passion, and because we love it and seeing it, I totally get it. I think it's you wear your heart in your sleeve, and there's no grudges. Shit happens, you move on and go from there. But has that ever got you in hot water, not just with a team or just in general though, with the way you go about things?
Definitely, my emotions in particular have got me, I don't know, in trouble, but I've learned to control that as much as I can over the time. I am very passionate. Feel like I'm a pure racist. I just love it. Love driving. Still, like, if I stop racing now, I'd be racing go-karts, man. I enjoy the craft of driving so much, and I enjoy competition a lot. And that's, I guess, where the emotion comes from. You've put a lot into it, and you want it to go right. So. I think just controlling that is the key to winning races and championships and really anything in life. You've got to control those. It just doesn't help when you lose your cool with someone. Never helps. You don't come to a good conclusion. And I control that pretty well these days. Every now and then when things go completely wrong, you just can't. I mean, you're not human if you don't get mad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, we're going to just become complete computers where there's no emotion involved. I mean, people do like to see that. I mean, I don't. I've watched Kyle Busch over the years, and I get exactly why he's mad. The guy is, very good at what he does, and when things don't go right, I mean, you with social media, you definitely get pounded a lot these days. Like, it seems like you got to give an absolute perfect interview with zero emotion or dislike towards someone that might have done something to you. But I mean, you just don't read that stuff. I think you just got to be yourself and always reflect on the things that you say that might have upset someone, or understand what made you get mad, or it's an ongoing process of improving yourself, I believe. I'm very reflective, and over the years I've become less emotional in those situations.
Yeah, I think fans as well, though, will equally complain if you're not showing emotion. So it's great that you do. And you kind of answered, you did answer my question, which was going to be, like, I hate the question about when someone says what keeps you motivated. When journalists ask you that question, like, well, I'm competitive, you want to win, you want to go into every race. But I did want to ask, like, has there ever been a time where it's been tough to get back up after a bad weekend or whatever, and you've been doing this for so long now, you've achieved, I imagine, a lot of your goals you set out for as a young bloke from Toowoomba. Has there ever been a point where you've thought, got to the end of a year and thought maybe it didn't go the way you wanted, and maybe it is getting tough?
Yeah, no, actually, that happened more in the early days. Now I just understand that nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is. And you learn something from every situation you encounter in life, basically. And in particular, motorsport, you encounter a lot of those issues. You can never sit there and go, that's not fair. You go, no, that is actually motorsport. Those things happened. And
Yeah.
there's always only one winner, and you're going to have bad races. And, I think that's the thing with getting older is you take that stuff so much better because you've been through it so many times. When you're young, you think it should just go perfect. Like, why didn't it go perfect? It's not fair, yeah, I'd probably say in 2016 was the closest I was to retiring, but it wasn't because I disliked the sport. I was struggling a lot with anxiety and mental health at that point for just a few reasons, but now, I love competing. I'm as passionate as ever. I still work extremely hard at it and enjoy it, and want to keep going. There's obviously going to be a time, but if you're still winning races in a series like IndyCar and still competing at a high level, I feel like it'd be a waste to stop.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
completely agree.
so good to hear that, I think. And there's going to be a lot of kids that hear that as well, and particularly the chat about like where you're at in 2016, because it's hard to accept sometimes that there is only going to be one winner. And when you're driving race cars, there's a big component that's underneath you that often can dictate success. So it's hard to keep. That's why I asked, has there been a point where it's hard to keep coming back? Because I certainly got there and struggled a little bit towards the end of my career. And yeah, maybe in time I'll look back and wish I tried to get through that period. But it's good for kids to hear. I think, mate, 21 years, unbelievable, and to still be winning. To go into this season and actually be a contender for the title is just so exciting to watch. So I can't wait to see how it goes, man. So good.
Well, also I would say you've got to remember how lucky you are to do this as a living. And I even see guys that get paid to race go-karts, right? And they're living the dream, man. Like, that is the dream. It's, you want to be sitting at a desk, 9-to-5 job. Like, getting paid to race anything is living the dream. That is an amazing job compared to 90% of the world. You're so lucky. Like, you can't complain. And maybe you don't realize that until you're older, but you should enjoy it when you're younger. You should enjoy that you are at the peak of your reflexes and drive and all that stuff. I mean, it's a very lucky job to have in motorsport, even just working in a race team. I mean, it's a cool job. You'll come to realize that when you're older, like, man, doing this is just amazing compared to the other alternative. Even just sitting, even if you're not working or anything, sitting around really sucks. Like, not having a job sucks. So to me, doesn't matter what you get paid, but if you're earning a living racing something, you are very lucky. You're very lucky. You're better than 90% of the people in the world.
Totally agree. And I am a 9-to-5 office worker, so I absolutely agree with you on that, mate. I'd much rather be driving a race car all the time.
Honestly, Will, it's been an amazing chat. And just one last thing is young Will Brown got the championship in supercars last year out of Toowoomba.
Yeah, the water.
Do you keep an eye on that? And also, do you ever reflect back and think about how talk about time in Europe and how close it came to being? Like, you got a very fortunate position with Champ Car being around, and do you ever look back and think, holy shit, how has this happened from Toowoomba? And because I'm sure Will has probably thought the same when he won the championship. It's like you grow up, in a country town, or not a country town, but a smaller town in Australia, and you go on to achieve some of the greatest sporting achievements that you could set out to do.
Yeah, I do look back and just in amazement, to feel fortunate and lucky, but I worked extremely hard at it and wanted it very badly. But it just blows my mind when I think about when I left school at 15. I would just turn 15, mind you. So only second year of high school, or just finished second year of high school, didn't really do third, and then started working. And just, which, I always had that dream of being a race car driver since I was a kid, but to have really accomplished my childhood dream is just, I do look back and it blows my mind. And blows my mind I'm 21 years into bloody running an Indycar. But it was very cool to see Will win that championship, Will Brown. I've met him a couple of times, sort of don't know him that well, but I sent him a message congratulating him, and actually would love to catch up with him when I'm back in Toowoomba next time. But for supercar, to win the supercar championship in Australia, like a boy from Toowoomba, that is a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's very tough to do, and it's very tough to end up in a team like Triple Eight. So cool to see. Seems like a very cool guy. Like still working, still gets up early.
Yeah.
Working his old man's business, driving a truck, from what I hear. So, I love it, man. I love it for him and his family, and he's accomplished. I'm sure it's accomplished his dream, but what not many people get to accomplish. So, good stuff.
Well, thanks heaps for coming on, Will. We've got your young fella you got to put to bed, so we'll let you go. We know it's late over there, but we really appreciate you coming on. Great insight, and we wish you nothing but the best for your 21st year.
Go and crush it
In IndyCar. We'll be cheering you on, mate.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on, and I love what you guys are doing. It's pretty good fun to listen to. So I wish you guys all the best also this year, and hopefully I'm talking to you at the end of the year with an Indy 500 win and a championship, and
let's hope so.
That would be that'd be something special.
Bloody oath. Thanks, man.
You got it. Thank you.